Hey guys, SGT here. Thanks for joining us. On the line right now, I have a very special person. Her name is Daphne Lee. She's the Clark County Chapter Head and Nevada State Director of PANDA. Daphne, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And guys, if you don't recall, PANDA stands for People Against the NDAA. It was founded by Dan Johnson, a friend of ours. Barack Obama signed the NDAA on New Year's Eve 2011 when he swore he wouldn't sign it. I got to tell you, Daphne, I reached out to you the very night that I found the video of you and I posted it.
I'm here fighting for you guys too, and my children and our future. The National Defense Authorization Act that was passed December 31st, 2011, enacted. They were carefully, deceptively worded provisions that were tucked into an enormous military budgetary bill, signed into law quietly on New Year's Eve, and it codifies for the first time in our nation's history the indefinite detention of any person merely suspected, not convicted, of committing a belligerent act against our government, including United States citizens.
It's one of the most powerful speeches you will ever see. Daphne, with that said, can you remind people about the NDAA and how you came to be so impassioned to fight against it?
Yeah, that particular bill, the 2012 National Defense Authorization Act, is it's the military budget. And it's been passed for almost the last 50 years. Obviously, a lot of members of Congress, nobody's going to vote against providing our troops with everything that they need and all the appropriations that are needed for the defense of our country. But that's probably why that particular bill was chosen, because it's such a large bill. They tucked into it two sections, 1021 and 1022, that codified for the first time in our nation's history the indefinite detention of any person merely based on suspicion of acts of terrorism.
Now, Daphne, let's hit on that point, because what you just said is so critical, and there's so much bad news unfolding on a daily basis in this country, and so many authoritarian things that our government is doing, that this one is almost slipping back down the memory hole. Just hit that point again for our audience. Now, what that means, what you're saying is that this bill allows this government to arrest anybody solely for the suspicion that they might somehow maybe be involved in some form of terrorism.
Yes, the language is very vague. It codified the AUMF, which was granted to George Bush in 2001 after the 9/11 attacks. And it basically was a carte blanche to go after the terrorists that perpetrated 9/11. It was very specific as to who it was targeting: Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, anyone connected to the 9/11 terrorism attack. But then what this bill did is it took that and expanded under it who is covered. And so it creates this new level of people who could be covered, and it included very vague terms: associated forces, any person who commits a belligerent act against or engages in hostilities against the United States or its coalition forces. So these terms are very, very broad, and it took something and it expanded it. When I would go back and listen to Senator Graham talking about why the bill should have been passed in the first place, he says it right there out in the open on the Senate floor that he believes that the United States is now part of the battlefield in the war on terror, and that if there is somebody who they suspect could be possibly committing a belligerent act here in our country, that they should be able to capture this person using our military, and they should be able to use the laws of war on that person versus civilian courts. So that's what's very disturbing about this, is the idea that somebody here, even in our own country, a citizen here in this country, if they are merely suspected of doing something belligerent against the government, that then our own military could be used against that person to indefinitely detain them, to rendition them to another country. And the language is very, very vague. And it's also very deceptive. There's a couple of contingencies within the language that if you're not a constitutional scholar, on its face you might think, well, United States citizens aren't covered under this. But I've spoken with plenty of constitutional attorneys, and they all agree with me that the language was created to be deceptive, and United States citizens are intended to, to be covered under this most certainly. I actually had the opportunity to speak to Senator Paul this summer personally myself, and he told me that he asked Senator McCain point blank on the Senate floor as this was being argued if United States citizens were covered, and Senator McCain did confirm to him on the floor of the Senate, and you can watch it on YouTube, that yes, a United States citizen can be covered under this.
Yeah, and let's talk about that, because what was shocking to so many of us who were paying attention to this issue back in the day, and the only politician really on our side who was speaking out against it and speaking vocally and speaking on behalf of the Constitution and on behalf of the people and on behalf of the Bill of Rights was Dr. Ron Paul. And that's why so many of us were so darn excited to get him into the White House so that he could protect our rights. But let's put that finer point on it. It needs to be declared. It needs to be restated. Senators like Lindsey Graham and John McCain were in full support of this provision,
Yes.
which essentially turns the United States into a battlefield in this endless war on terror, where anyone they label a terrorist is now an enemy of the state. And it could not be more disturbing. And I think what was so inspiring about your speech is that you were speaking from the heart as a mom. You were speaking from the heart as an American. You were speaking from the heart, period. And clearly, men like Lindsey Graham and John McCain don't speak from the heart. They're coming from a completely different place, a place that seems to be bought and paid for. And you said, and I quote, "The laws of war do not and cannot coexist with our Bill of Rights. It's not possible."
Now, I'm going to tell you, the laws of war do not and cannot coexist with our Bill of Rights. It's not possible. They are two totally different animals. You cannot apply the laws of war to this country and expect for the Bill of Rights to be respected and upheld. It's not possible.
And you got choked up, and it choked me up because you were you're so right.
It's hard to imagine that we're here at this place at this time, and I do worry for my children. I have 7 nieces and nephews and 3 children, and I worry about the future of this country and what they're going to be left with if we don't do something about something as serious like the NDAA.
Yeah, because the bottom line is we can talk about a corporatocracy, we can talk about fascism, we can talk about a lot of these bigger issues that worry us all, but at the end of the day, if our government will not stand up for our individual rights as free human beings, if they will not stand up for the Bill of Rights, then we no longer have a government that's representative. We no longer have a government that is out for the best interests of the people. In fact, this government appears to be against the people. And that's the most shocking conclusion you can come to. When Barack Obama promised he wouldn't sign this thing, and then he signed it anyway, it's really the most egregious thing he's done. And he's done a lot of egregious things.
Absolutely. And I come from a family where a lot of members of my family have served our country. And I have, so much support for our troops, even though I don't agree necessarily with what they're being sent out to do. And when I think about these men and women who they sign up because they want to protect our freedoms, and I think about them coming home and then the freedoms that they signed up or possibly gave their lives to protect aren't even in existence anymore, it really, really bothers me. I think for me, the least I can do is make sure that all of those sacrifices weren't made in vain, and that there's a Bill of Rights still here when they come home, if they make it home. And so I just feel very strongly about this. This is probably the worst law that's been passed in the last 100 years, arguably. And it makes me sad because a lot of people still don't even know what it is or understand it. And there's still a lot of confusion regarding this law. And that confusion is perpetrated from legislators as well. I mean, I got to sit down and have breakfast with Congressman Heck here in Nevada and address this issue with him. And he's on the Arms Force Committee. And he told me that I was wrong. The United States citizens are not covered under this. And I had a copy of the bill with me, and I pulled it out and laid it on the table. And I said, "Where do you see that it says that?" And he fumbled through it, and he was like, "Well, this section," and I'm like, "Read it again. I mean, really read it and think about what it says legally if you were an attorney, because the language is so deceptive." And he's like, "Well," he wouldn't come my way, but he was like, "I guess there's room for misinterpretation. And he pledged to me at that time that he would do something about it, which of course he has not. So that's why we're here. PANDA is working at a local level, because the congressional level, things are not getting done. I mean, there's been plenty of amendments, the Smith-the-Mosh amendment, that have tried to correct this, and they're not successful. And in Congress right now, it's just, for lack of a better term, it's a hot mess over there. So while this is standing in Congress, we are taking back our own towns. We have the Take Back Your Town campaign with PANDA, where we're just going to go ahead and reaffirm the rights of due process for our citizens here locally. And we're going to stop this, nip it in the bud here locally. And so that's what we've been trying to do all over the country.
So your goal, and I think it's an honorable one, is to try to take back your personal power and take back the power on a local level, right? The attempt is to get police and the sheriff's department and law enforcement on a local level not to abide by this law should feds come in and try to enforce it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now,
ours is a weaker version, because when mine was introduced, it came from San Francisco. Mine is a non-compliance, which is still a very good start, where the police would be asked to not comply or not assist. But there have been stronger resolutions passed, like in Albany, New York, or Oxford, Massachusetts, Webster, Massachusetts, where they are actually have their police force will interpose and stop somebody from doing this. So we're going to have to work towards making ours stronger eventually. But right now, my goal is just to get this first level passed and then move forward with the sheriff.
Now, when will the Clark County Commission announce whether or not they're supporting your resolution?
Well, each state and each city, the political demographics are different for every landscape. And so the Las Vegas City Council already passed this back in March. And we've been waiting for the county commission to put it up. And they tabled it. They put it in a drawer. And that's when I realized, after several months and they had not returned any of my emails or my phone calls, that I was going to have to go down there and start speaking out and asking them to please bring it to the agenda. So the video is actually the third time I had been down there. The first time I went, I spoke during public comment in the beginning, and they didn't know who I was or what I was there to speak about. And I read the resolution that was passed by the city council out loud. And they all smiled at me, and I said, please, I'm asking you to put this on the agenda. I don't understand why we're waiting. And I waited, and 2 weeks later, it still wasn't on the agenda. So I went back again, and I read the list of cities and states and counties that have already passed things like this, because the California state legislature had just had their governor sign their anti-NDAA bill. And so I read that list of cities, states, and counties that are doing the same thing, just to kind of show them, like, this is going on all over the country. Please, will you please bring this to the agenda? And they still had not. So by the time the video happened, that was my third time there.
And we should tell people you had to wait, 8 hours? Did you wait 8 hours to speak?
I was there from 9 o'clock in the morning until 5:30 in the evening. It was a really long day. I got there that morning, the house was packed. The chairman, Commissioner Sisolak, he knew I was coming down there that particular morning, because I had posted on my Facebook that, okay, enough was enough already. I'm coming down there to kind of put their feet to the fire and be a little more aggressive. I'd been very friendly the first 2 times.
And they were hoping you'd get up and leave.
Yeah, I was getting up. I was sitting there. They did public comment, and I was sitting there, and I had my little speech in my hand, and I was standing up, and he was like, and unless you're here to speak on a specific agenda item, you will have to wait until public comment at the end.
It's unbelievable.
And that's when I got very upset, because I felt like he had been pretending to be a friend of mine this whole time, and then there he was, basically putting me right under the bus. So I thought to myself, okay, you want me to wait? I will wait. And so I sat there and I waited, and about halfway through there was a break, and he came up to me and he said to me, I can't believe you're still here. It's going to be another 4 or 5 hours before public comment. And I told him, yeah, I know. My kid has a soccer game I'm missing. My husband's had to redo all of his schedule to help me with the kids today. I'm like, but I'm going to wait. And he was like, oh, don't miss your kid's soccer game. Nothing's more important than that. And I said, no, this is that more important than that. And I said, I'm going to wait. I really think that he thought I would leave. But I sat there the whole time, and I learned a lot while I was sitting there. The senator who killed my bill in committee, he was actually there at that meeting to speak upon the medicinal marijuana item. And some friends of mine caught up with him in the hallway, and they flagged him down. Senator Sickerbloom, why didn't you allow the Nevada Liberty Preservation Act to be heard in committee? And he actually lied to them. He said it was never a bill. It never was sponsored by anyone. So this is the kind of people we're dealing with. We're dealing with state senators who are willing to lie, bold-face, to constituents.
Yeah.
It just blew my mind that he had the nerve to lie to them. I'm like, it's still on the website. You can still read the actual bill and see everyone who sponsored it on the Nevada legislature website. So, so I waited. And by the time, I was scared to leave because since he had done that to me, I was scared that if I left, that they might try to pull something. I mean, I'm still learning. I am just a mom. I'm still learning how everything works, and I don't know all the rules and regulations by heart. So I just felt like, I got to stick this one out in case they try to pull something funny. So I did. I sat there, and luckily, because I am a mom, I did have a granola bar and a bottle of water in my purse, and we made it through the day. But by the time I got up there, I was very emotional. I know some people were like, why can't girls, give a speech without crying?
No, it's perfect.
But, I think in life, sometimes things happen for a reason. Had I not been tested and made to wait, maybe I wouldn't have given that speech as passionately as I did. And the emotion, I mean, that was just kind of I feel like this whole fight, because I've been doing this for over a year, this whole fight, to me, it's ridiculous on one hand what we're fighting for, why these legislators and these councilmen and these commissioners can't just say, oh, this is a no-brainer that we should be defending the Bill of Rights.
That's my feeling.
I have to fight like this, but the frustration was there.
Yeah, and I'm frustrated, and that's my feeling too. I wanted to ask you about that because when we look at lawmakers on the national level, guys like McCain and Lindsey Graham, who've been in office for so long, we can talk about special interests. We can suggest that they've been bought and paid for, and it would seem that the evidence backs that up. And I talk a lot about taking our power back on a local level, acting locally, doing exactly what you've been doing exactly what PANDA's been doing in general. And it has to be really, really frustrating to see the same behavior on the local level from local officials who I wouldn't think could be bought and paid for. Could they? Are they that myopic? Are they that brainwashed by this system? Or do they really believe it, or are they bought and paid for? Because this is a no-brainer.
I know, I'm still learning a lot about politics. I've been involved locally now. There's a lot going on in the background that people don't see. Here in Nevada, for instance, Senator Reed is our senator, and he runs the Democratic caucus through the entire state. And he's a kingmaker. Yeah,
he just exempted his staff from Obamacare. That was announced today. So nice guy. He's been pushing for it harder than anybody.
He's special, that one.
Yeah,
and he's very powerful here in Nevada. And so the majority in our state legislature is Democratic, and our entire county commission board is Democratic. And we do have a couple of Republicans. Not to say that Republicans, obviously, like we've been saying, McCain and Graham, are traitors, are off the hook. There's good guys and bad guys on both sides. It's a nonpartisan issue. There's good guys fighting it and bad guys pushing it from both sides. But here in Nevada, what he says goes. And so if he is, which I'm just speculating, for instance, before the bill was not allowed to be heard in committee at the state level, that particular senator had promised me and my northern counterpart, Chris, that he would allow it to be heard. And a week before the deadline was up, Senator Reed went up to Carson City and he spoke with his entire Democratic caucus. And then suddenly, I'm just assuming here that my bill was given the gong. Suddenly, that senator had to change of heart and gave us a myriad of excuses on why it couldn't be heard. And so I'm not saying that he's behind, the tabling of our resolution, but he is very powerful, and if he doesn't care for this, that's another obstacle that I have to deal with, because even on the local level, the politicians in this state, he can make you or break you, and they all know that.
Okay. Well, yeah, and it's
unfortunate that he has that much power here in our state.
Yeah, it's so disheartening, because you're moving mountains, and you're doing everything that all of us should be doing. And the example of you going down there 3 times and sitting there the 3rd time for 8 hours and not taking, and not letting them dissuade you it's just so powerful. And I'm so appreciative of you for having done it. And this is the first time we've met, but I was really moved when I watched your speech, and I want you to know that you've moved and inspired countless others. And ultimately, that's what we need if we're going to take this thing back, because it's getting so bad that on Tuesday, Michael Cannon, the Cato Institute director, testified before a congressional committee about the dangers of this president's legal behavior. And he said, and I quote, "There is one last thing to which the people can resort if the government does not respect the restraints that the Constitution places on the government." He said, "Abraham Lincoln talked about our rights to alter our government or our revolutionary right to overthrow it," end quote. It's the first time that I've seen anybody of his stature say something like that publicly. We don't talk about overthrowing the government here at SGT Report. We talk about taking the government back, taking our power back locally, taking our country back by supporting men like Ron Paul. But I think people need to realize it all trickles down. For instance, I was at a county commission meeting, and they passed a resolution. They want to bring the pilot program for domestic drones here to Nevada. And it went to the city council and the county commission. Now, that was the Federal Aviation Modernization Act was passed by Congress in 2012 that now is trying to allow domestic drone integration with our federal aviation system. And it trickled from Congress all the way down to our senators instructed our governor to create a team, which then would go and lobby every city and every council to get on board with this. And so we're getting on our feet here as far as watchdogging our local governments. But had we had some sort of watchdog group in place at that time, this was, several months ago, we could have maybe coalesced a group of people to voice dissent, because as of right now, here in Nevada, we have 0 privacy laws regarding domestic drones. The technology is moving faster than the legislation. And I sat there in horror watching them pass it without blinking their eyes. Even one commissioner raised a question. She said, we don't have any privacy laws. And the lobbyist said to her, well, be careful the laws that you pass, because that might take us out of the running to be selected as the state, one of the 6 states to be a pilot program. And I emailed her back. I said, the laws he's talking about are privacy laws, because some states are using their local governments to pass anti-drone privacy laws. And that's exactly what he was talking about. Unfortunately, those things went right on through with barely any dissent, because people just aren't aware. And so when we talk about getting involved, the local level is the place to do it. And I know, I'm guilty of it as anyone else. Before this last election cycle, I thought voting and reading the newspaper was my civic duty. And I had never been to a county commission meeting or to a city council meeting. And now that I've been, I can tell you that it's not like they're very exciting. They're pretty dry. But that's where they've been running amok with no repercussions to their actions. And so you can have a powerful impact by coming to your local meetings and creating your own local watchdog groups that read each agenda and see if there's something controversial that needs to be flagged that everyone needs to know. And we use social media and YouTube and all these wonderful tools that we have now to get the message out and let people know what's going on. Because like I said, it will trickle down right down to your local governments, and you'll never even know it. You leave me speechless, because you're so darn articulate. I want to impress on people too, Daphne, that you've volunteered hundreds and hundreds of hours of your time, because even though your title is Clark County Chapter Head and Nevada State Director of PANDA, which is a good, fancy, nice title, you don't get paid, do you?
No, we are strictly a volunteer organization. For me, Ron Paul, he said, if you see something wrong, you have a duty to do something about it. And I've been blessed. I work part-time, but I mostly take care of my children. I look around right now. People are just struggling on a day-to-day basis to get by, just to scrape by and get, through every single day in baseball practice and dental appointments and work. And so they don't have the luxury of time sometimes to get involved or to stay on top of what's going on. So I felt, since I've been blessed enough to have that time, the least I can do is dedicate myself and dedicate my time for those people who can't, and they don't have physically the time to do it. And so I've kind of taken this on as like, this is my job now, is to be a guardian for those who can't speak out because they're too busy just trying to survive right now.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, thank you for what you're doing. And is there any way that we can support you? Is there anything that readers should do or can do to support you and PANDA?
I would say get involved locally. You can join PANDA and try to accomplish this goal in your own town. It takes persistence, but it can be done. And we do have, our county commission is going to vote on our resolution December 17th. You can go on the Clark County Commission website page and find each of their contact information if anyone wants to email them and ask them to please support this and explain to them how important this is. I don't think even now, after everything, that they understand the gravity of how important this is, that we stand up for our country's at a crossroads right now. People are scared because of what happened from 9/11, but 12 years later, we have to realize that with everything going on, the NDAA, the NSA, all of these violations of our rights, that if we don't stop it now, we're on a terrible road and it's going to get really bad. We can't live out of fear and give up all of our rights because, like our national anthem says, we're the land of the free and the home of the brave. I don't think most Americans are, I think they would, if they knew about what was going on. I think a lot of people still don't know if they knew what was going on, that they would stand up, because we are a brave country and we do value our freedoms. And so we need to stop allowing these leaders to scaring us. And that's all they're doing, is they're trying to scare us into giving up all of our rights. Too many people have paid the ultimate price to preserve these freedoms, and it's our turn now.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Guys, if you want to get involved and join PANDA, they could really use your support. It's PANDA, People Against the NDAA, and the website is pandaunite.org. Daphne, boy, what a joy to speak with you. I can't thank you enough for your time. I can't thank you enough for your ability to articulate these issues and to do so publicly and to stand up for all of us, because that's what you did. You stood up for all of us, and just getting choked up. It really means a lot. We need more people doing that. We need more good, honest politicians like Dr. Ron Paul, and I think we should leave this on a good note. You got some great news today. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I got an email this morning that Dr. Paul wants me to do an interview on his Ron Paul channel tomorrow morning. So it's very exciting. I guess he saw my video and he, it struck a chord with him as well. So who knew that one public comment at a county commission meeting could mean so much? So go out there, you guys. Do it. Don't be afraid. I would get really nervous. I've never been a public speaker or any of these things before. You have to tell yourself, these are regular people and they work for you. And they have forgotten that. And they put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you do. So these congressmen, these senators, these commissioners, these councilmen, you can talk to them like a regular person, because that's what they are. And I think we've kind of lost touch with that. They work for us, and they need to remember that they work for us. And so go out there, you guys, and take back your towns. I look forward to seeing the news as this spreads across the nation. And thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it back. One person really can move mountains. So Daphne Lee, thanks so much for your time.
You're welcome. Have a great evening.
You too. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
One day, somebody's going to have to say enough.